Let's do it. Okay, so.
Do you have to do introductions again?
Oh yeah, sorry. My name's Courtney.
Isaac.
Olivia.
Alex.
Stephanie.
All right, exam 2. So, number 1, as a group, outline the basic tenets of Dadaism, holistically presented through Homo Deus and not simply the last chapter, as developed by Harari, and then describe Hahn's Burnout Society. The group should holistically describe the arguments after describing the basic arguments of the two, compare and contrast the visions of being human in a technological age, whose vision is most accurate and why. Cool. So, I can start, I guess.
Okay.
In Homo Deus, he pretty much outlines that, like this is a quote from the book, the universe consists of data flows, and the value of any phenomenon or entity is determined by its contribution to data processing, which kind of like ties into literally everything that we talked about post the previous book of like humans are nothing more than algorithmic beings, however the heck you say that, and like our decisions can't be made on our own. Systems can figure it out better than ourselves, which we talked about in so many different ways, whether it be relationships and like this person's better for you, or this job's better for you, or your health, because we couldn't, like the lesser beings would kind of be cut out of society because you can't buy your organs. Like,
Or knowing what to buy.
yes.
He also talks about like the free flow of information, making sure like it's everything's shared. So I know he talked a lot about, like why shouldn't you encourage like all of your family members to get like their DNA sequenced, and why should you not want like third parties like listening in on like your phone calls and your text messages, and taking you know, those sometimes like they take like certain terms and like apply it like, oh, how can we, you know, like market something towards you based on what you're talking about in a conversation on your phone. So that was like one of the
Yeah, he
things
said
that-
like humans are like they're destined to merge into it. Everybody wants to be a part of the data flow. One of the big things that Harari said, well, that really struck me was the idea of Facebook and just like you and or something. It had something to do with like if you don't post something, did it really happen? Which kind of goes right into like how we put our meaning all into the data flow, and we're completely losing it in terms of I guess like what the humanists kind of said, and why liberalism and humanism might be threatened too. I guess like overall from the book, Harari kind of builds on everything, starting from like how we're going to all like for the pursuit of happiness do all of this, and then he just kind of outlines and discusses like what does this idea of religion mean, like the liberal humanist, how this is going to be replaced and all of into the dataist perspective. But then he presents another religion, but so you guys remember is technological. Ultimately, it's going to be the dataist.
Sure.
So it also has a few commandments, which he outlines, and he also states it's missionary.
He also talks about a lot too about like how silence is kind of a waste of time, which we can hit on whenever we talk about Han and like his opposing view of that, but just that.
Right, but we'll reflect on that when we get to Han.
Just.
So wait, you're going off what she said. Right?
Sorry, it was right there.
I had to.
So like technology with us like posting stuff on social media and doing all that, we're kind of simplifying ourselves. That's what technology does. Like it talks about not to jump ahead, but Machines of Love and Grace, how like these like are we stable as a ecosystem, but like if they're really more complex. So like technology kind of simplifies us, right? And like I don't know.
It definitely puts us in like, it kind of like categorizes us into like where we're gonna be. It's like almost like
Like the class system kind of thing.
yeah, pretty and like that, but like even more so that it kind of like draws like a map of like where you're going to go, whether like because like you make one decision based off of like technology and like what we know and what we're drawn to, and it leads to something else.
And kind of in that simplifying thing too, we talked about, like Harari says silence is like something that's we shouldn't do, and it talked about the lady with the helmet and how she like gave herself over completely, and like that silence was amazing because she didn't have to think of anything. And he pretty much says like being submerged in technology is what we should fill our time with rather than like actually thinking and not being like pretty much simplifying ourselves to the point where we shouldn't think on our own ever.
Because
But,
we're like deteriorating our like humanness almost, like
Right.
the things that make us human, technology's like simplifying, and then we're becoming, it's like we're becoming zombies or whatever.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
But, yeah, so, but Hans, he argues, I guess, that reflection is necessary for what it means to be human. I mean, yeah, so that's, I guess, where is it here? He says,
Was it will, reason, and memory? Yeah.
yeah, the ego, for Han, the ego abandoned itself. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. Oh, we discussed like the technological Sabbath and how we should like reflect on life without technology so we can appreciate that. And then it kind of goes, he just kind of like, and then he discusses like, can we accept this boredom? So that's where the contemplation begins for Han. And so what do you guys think of this, like in terms of accepting boredom? Like, do you think, I mean, we kind of briefly touched on this in class.
Yeah, I think he like termed it like the vita contemplativa, versus the vita activa. And I feel like that there's definitely like merit there, like making it a point to like have the two as separate things, like, you know, like we're too caught up in doing like our work and life that there's very little time to like just reflect, like to pause and everything. In one of my classes, I'm taking intercultural communication too, and in the beginning of the semester, like our teacher had us do like, it was called the pause, where like she just like did like talking, like meditation, like we all close our eyes, she shut the lights off and everything, and like she had us write a response about it, and like almost like all the responses she said was like how like no one's ever done that before, like, and afterwards like everyone felt like so much better, like their stress was like way down and everything like that. So I think that there's definitely a need for like vita contemplativa, yeah, and I think, yeah, we definitely don't do enough of that.
Yeah, I think, like Han's points throughout the book make sense, like the vita activa pretty much turns us into the animal labyrinths of like, we can't really think, like we become that beast of burden because we're so stressed out that like we almost don't accomplish anything, which I think kind of makes sense. And Han just talks a lot about like, because we're so achievement driven, it's like driving us to getting burnout, which is driving to depression, which is driving to like the ultimate demise of society. It was just interesting to see how he was pretty much so opposite Harari. Not so much that like technology's bad, like avoid it and be Amish, but he was kind of like, you need to pull out of it, and Harari was like, dive in, like, give up now.
Yeah, they definitely clashed a lot. I like how Han came from like, you know, like this burnout is caused from, not from negative like impacts of technology, but positive impacts of technology and working too hard.
What do we think about the shutting can that he?
Oh wait, real quick, I'm sorry, I could
Oh,
do
no,
that.
no.
So I agree, like we need time to reflect on stuff, because like with experiences and stuff, like we might be caught up in technology too much and never get a chance to really like reflect on what we did, and like until like the day you die, you're like, I've been working I've been doing this my whole life just without even like taking time to think like, what about yesterday, like what experience I had with someone or something. And that's like important, like developing your humanness again. So.
And it kind of reflects like that idea of like all that like information, how like it's just constantly coming at us. And like when you said that, it reminded me of something you said in class, like you're not going to remember this like next week because you're just constantly being like given all the information.
Definitely feel, sorry.
The like the multitasking orientation developed by our devices. We're just told to be good at multitasking.
Yeah, there's definitely times where like, I don't even remember what I wore like 2 days ago. Like that's just like how like caught up like you get in everything. And yeah, I think it's just like crazy. But like, do you think that like, even though like, okay, like after you read something that's like, hey, like take a step back from this, like, do you think like without doing that, like you would be like cognizant of the fact that like this is happening to us? that like we don't like set aside time for leisure or like just like to pause and everything.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that they're almost kind of like building in things now too, to make people aware, like, we didn't used to have the screen report that was like, oh, you spent 72 hours this week on your phone,
Yeah.
like, calm down, or like, there's a bunch of buttons now where it'll kick you off if you like spend too much time on it. So I think there's like subliminal messaging. They're not like, oh, put your phone down kind of thing,
Right.
but like, I think everyone is starting to become more aware that like, we're kind of like inching closer to the whole Harari, like, I'm not gonna decide anything for myself anymore and everything's gonna be fake and
Yeah.
filtered and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
and then I guess just like, then as a follow-up, like, do you think like, even if we are cognizant that we like are gonna do anything about it, because like so much of our life is built around technology and so reliant on technology, like, is there anything we can really do?
And it's actually funny how they're making apps now that take you off your phone. So
Yeah.
now we're using our phone to not even use our phone.
Yeah.
Like the screen time and the meditation apps, whatever.
Yeah.
So like, that's how much we rely on it.
I mean, I think there's definitely like a shift. I mean, like kind of like, I'm not sure if it's like I think it's developing for sure, because we're definitely, you guys have seen these things, like he's brought up like the development of certain things like phones. And then, I mean, like just with like the books that are coming out, like people are starting to become aware that this is a problem, and
It is kind of scary to think though, like, there's the potential that there might not ever be a shift, like, looking at my younger siblings who are way more obsessed with their phone than I am, like, it's kind of scary to think that, like, someday they're gonna run the world, run the country, and they, like, cannot function without their phones.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, we're cognizant of it, but it's really scary because I don't think that, like, everyone that has grown up from day one having their phone is as cognizant of it.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna like be us that's going to, like, we're like the determining factor at this point, because we're becoming aware of it, and like others. So
It's
like,
gonna
I
keep
guess
getting
it's
worse
gonna be
for
like,
sure.
like it's kind of like up to us at this point, like how we raise our kids, and are we like gonna let them have a phone by the age of 2?
I think
Yeah.
it's just so
I
different
don't want
'cause-
that. I don't want them knowing who my kid is by the age
Yeah,
of 2.
right.
But like when we were younger, it was just like it was possible to raise a child without them being like, you know, 11 or 12 without a cell phone, and now it's just like the world has made it like you almost need to have like your kid to have a phone, just because everyone else has a phone, and like you need to stay in contact with like your kid, and I don't know, it's just running the world.
So I guess circling back to the question, what side do you guys think, like, because we're supposed to, whose vision is more accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys
So
have?
we should go around and say it, and then we can start like, okay, so I think Han's more accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have to agree with that. Yeah, I think like Harari definitely talks about like what technology has given us, but like he takes it like a bit too far for
Yeah.
me. Like he's like, just like give everything over, like everything's gonna be
Yeah.
fine. Just trust in the technology, and like sometimes like you can't trust the technology fully.
And it's kind of like Olivia, she kind of brought up the should and can thing, like just because we can do it doesn't mean we should
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
Just because I can jump off of Gumberg doesn't mean I'm going to jump
Right.
off of Gumberg.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense because like he says all these points and how like he realizes how bad it is really for us almost, and like but he's still saying to like give into it almost.
yeah, I think Han too, we had talked about it in class, like, although he doesn't really hit on like the greatness that is technology, we had said like he's not really a one-eyed prophet. He
Yeah.
understands, and like there's so
Yeah.
much other stuff written about like this is how great technology is, that he kind of just dives into
Yeah.
like a community that understands that, so he just gives this idea of
Yeah,
like,
it's a given.
Yeah.
You know, technology is.
like we know it's great, but like here's kind of a way that we should not submerge ourselves completely. So for that, I also side with Han, because I think Harari kind of just took it as like technology is great, there's nothing bad, let's like, he does say the bad things, but he kind of like brushes them under the rug.
Yeah.
For sure.
No.
So for that, I side with Han too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with Owen.
Alright.
No,
So-
I definitely think like, especially with just like the whole idea of reflection, I really think that that's just like a crucial element.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Han definitely like dives in the more like self-exploitation side of it, and that it's kind of like our fault.
Mhm.
We
And,
also,
like, we have gotten ourselves here, and like we have to
Yeah.
get ourselves out. So that's why I think that's why I definitely side with more so.
That actually makes sense too, just because like we talked at the beginning of reading this book, like Harari is pretty much like avoid history, like don't
Yeah.
ignore everything that's ever happened. We're just gonna start
Nothing
again.
bad happened at all, like no
Yeah.
wars or anything.
Yeah.
No.
And like you can't really do that.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Yeah.
it kind of I see like a similar theme to like modern day communists, because they're like, oh, like, you know, millions of people didn't die under communism. Like, that didn't happen. We should like get back to that, because like that's the only thing that's fair. And
Right.
it's like, well,
Like on paper, okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
In practice, no.
exactly. That's kind of like how I see like the idea of like David. I'm like, well, it's not very plausible.
With Han, I understood his arguments, like in terms of like we talked about it in sociology a little bit, and then just like with the ideas of being, like he pulls on from a lot of people from Foucault to like some existential phenomenology, and I just think like and like just like where you see yourself in time with the image, all kind of goes back to like the idea of like significance of reflection. So I really thought it was interesting how you took Foucault's idea of discipline kind of, I'm not sure if he took it or if he's just like adding to it and stuff when he discusses from discipline to achievement, if that's an add-on or if he's critiquing or like just what was going on there, but. So do we wanna
We're ready
go
for
to
the
the next
next
question?
Yeah.
Alright, so as a group, describe all watched over by machines of love and grace. Part 2, the use and abuse of vegetational concepts. Whew. I would love the director to say that 5 times.
I know.
Utilizing the documentary and the points developed in the previous section. Discuss the benefits and limitations of reducing human society and individuals to algorithms, especially humans being biological algorithms. Why is it that human society and human beings cannot ultimately be treated as systems or algorithms?
So, that's like to begin, like they were talking about everything like as one big interconnected ecosystem.
Mhm.
Like
Balance and stability.
exactly. Yeah, and they brought up like a bunch of like different like scientists and like people who worked with the government who were like working with all these theories and doing all these tests. Like I thought that was really interesting, kind of how like deep that goes. Like I don't know, like I would think like some people would think, oh, it's just like a conspiracy theory, like something like that, like people just glaze over it. But like, you know, this was like a big thing for like quite a few like years. I thought that
Yeah,
was
when
that was
like
really
even though it
odd
like
to
failed
me.
in the communes, they
Mhm.
continued to try to reestablish
Yeah.
that idea of like kind of like this egalitarian society, only for it not to work. Kind of going ahead. I don't want to answer the last question already, but because of like power and stuff, so
Yeah.
there's ultimately that, but
I just thought it was funny the way that they took like communes, because when I think of communes, I think of like Woodstock hippie, like
Mhm.
peace kind of thing, and
Yeah.
then they took it like what was really happening in communes was that the whole like power divide, and regardless of if you try to have everyone have equal power, as peaceful or drugged out, whatever, as these people were, it just didn't work. But it kind of works too, like even if they were drugged out,
Right.
technology is what's drugging us out,
Yeah,
as we've talked about in class. So obviously, as much as you try to limit like the power that everyone has, it just doesn't work. That's not how humans work.
Non-ideal.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too. So I think this was in part 3 because I accidentally watched part 3. Whoops. But they talked a lot about how like when they were studying like the animals and then relating it to humans and like trying to make that predictive sequence, like they were looking for patterns, like we had talked about with the whole algorithmic sequence. But they couldn't predict
the
it.
more data was actually making it
Worse,
worse, which
yeah.
demonstrated that the idea of ecology just didn't actually
yeah,
stand,
it's
doesn't
not.
hold. So when we took this mechanical concept, as I believe they stated in the film, and tried to like apply it, it didn't.
Yeah, and some of the ideas were like, we're just competing computer codes that are simply machines that pass on genes, but then the more that they looked into that, they're like, wait, this doesn't work. Like, that's not how
And
this
what
is.
that proves is like, we're not algorithms. Because if we were, then we would be able to
Predictable.
be predictable and be controlled.
Yeah, the part where I forget the name of the guy, but like the guy who did like the feedback loops, and I think like he was part of like
Was that Forrester?
It might have been him.
He like the chart and stuff.
Yeah, he did the chart and everything. I think he was with like
There are a lot of
the
charts.
Club of Rome, like the UN conference. or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And he went to that, and they were talking about like all the environmental issues going on, and he was like, I got it, I got the solution, and he like just drew something up, and he's like, yep, this is it. And I'm like, there's like no way that like
You
it
can
is
come up with
that you
something for like
can-
overpopulation
Mhm.
actually.
that, and well, not only that, but like, how can you like impose like something like on a dynamic world that's something that always like shifts?
Mhm.
Like we tried, like I wrote down like while I was watching this, I was like, we try to quantify what we are not meant to. Like some things just like have to be,
Yeah.
and like work things out for themselves. And yeah, I just thought like that was very, very strange. He was like, yep, just here's all these lines, and like this is what we're gonna do. Like, okay, pal.
Yeah.
And they were like simplifying everything too.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember
that's-
as the detail kept coming out, like the printing and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was like more they were on.
Yeah, and I also wrote down like we do not know or understand like the magnitude of what we're dealing with. Like you were saying, they simplify everything,
Yeah.
but like things are so much more bigger than simplifying it. And by
Mhm.
simplifying it, they got it wrong because they didn't take into account everything.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess this, the ecology perspective kind of goes even back into the last one, Iron Man's idea.
Mhm.
Like that,
Yeah, for sure.
But there's something in here interesting.
So overall, if you're gonna wrap like things up right now, we'd come to the conclusion that we have free will, right?
Mhm.
And so we do have a choice to give into technology or not. Whether it's easy, hard, or like he thinks we can or not, but we can because we have free will. So how do we not give into it?
I think like Zach, like in class, he came up with like a good thing. Like, how do we like push back on it and like in a way like, okay, we can, but like, are we making ourselves more disadvantaged by doing so, or like making ourselves like part of the minority that they want to get rid of? Like, are we bringing like attention to ourselves, like making ourselves targets? Like, if they do go to like extreme measures to try to incorporate like everyone into the huge system.
Yeah, I don't know, like going back to like my digital detox, the only way I kind of got through it was just like building a routine without my phone and like making sure I could do things like without a screen.
Mhm.
And so, but the problem is like the world runs on screens now and they're everywhere, and there's so much money in it that like it's never ever gonna like
Yeah.
go away, and we have no choice but to kind of like cope with it, just like as we have been for the last like 15 years, is like learning how to use this technology and like how to build ourselves around it.
Yeah.
So
I always like think of like this like dystopian thing that we're gonna like become and everything, and it's like the whole 1984 idea.
Yeah.
Like there's gonna be like the powers that be, and then there's gonna be us, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
we're either with them or we're not with them, and if we're not with them, like we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like
He always brings up like the example of Brave New World,
Mhm.
which
Yeah, that
before he
too.
brought it up, like as soon as I started reading it up, like reading this, I was like, you know, this kind of reminds me of like this, and then he brought it up, and it's like, yeah, like there is that idea of like with the soma, and they just kept using it and stuff for happiness and stuff
Yeah.
to hide. I mean, it's like everything, yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of taking that idea into this, like beneficially, it could potentially benefit society because we would be more predictable, and we would like have those weakened genetics removed, which sounds disgusting.
But there wouldn't be a hierarchy, like I guess
Yeah,
one of the things
supposedly.
that, but equal members of a global system, so there's order. It claims that it liberates the individual, so it gives like power to people.
Right,
So
'cause
there's
it's
no
individuals.
politics or like of alliances. And this all goes back to like the system of feedback and connected by many who act as forms like
And you could control more because there wouldn't be like separate thoughts. It technically should be everyone's like thinking together, like that whole like group think mentality.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like Harari said something about like it wouldn't need individuals as like or like humans as individuals, but as like a collective or something.
Mhm.
Sorry, that just popped up. What about like so the limitations?
It's never worked ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They kind of showed that with the people tripping out on the bus. And obviously, like, if you try to control stuff like this, or you give that equal power, they showed Rwanda that was like, yep, we like had the power, held it, but then gave back, and then mass genocide happens. Like, no big deal.
Yeah, so it's, I have like it's a mechanical idea, so like it just doesn't, things expect exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of like a catch-22, like, there's a point that we need people in power to, not so much control us, but lead us, like, be true leaders. But at the same time, like, sometimes we don't want to be led, like, we don't want people controlling us. So, like, I don't know, there needs to be a balance, but whatever that balance is that's what we have to figure out.
And I think the like real limitation too is like we've all talked about, like humans can't really be predicted no matter how hard they try. Like we really aren't the algorithm that's like you type this in then you'll get this. Like
Yeah,
There's some
goes back to
facets that that's
It's
true,
a
but
Yeah.
small
for the
part of
most
us.
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the most part.
and so ultimately no matter how hard you try, like the limitation is it's never really gonna work. It never has. Kind of like the whole idea of like communism, like on paper it sounds great.
Yeah.
You try it out and
Usually if it, on paper, if it looks like it's gonna work out perfectly for everyone, it's
It's really
never
not.
going to.
Right.
Even if someone had all the same interests in their phones, were taking everything the same likes, same things they buy, same posts almost, same sports, everything they do the same, they can still be completely different people.
Yeah.
It all goes back to
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
That experience
Yeah, that's
that
what
we
I was just
have as
gonna
an
say.
individual and how
And-
to reflect on that experience.
And like with
Yeah.
experience, like there's a beneficiary and there's someone like who is being benefited.
Yeah.
I guess
Always.
this kind of goes back to that idea of like culture as well.
Yeah.
We kind of briefly discussed that. Yeah.
I was gonna what I was gonna say was like interpersonal like communication, how that relates back, like if you're friends with somebody for so long, you could be like, oh, like I knew you were gonna say that or something like that. Like you can predict things in that way.
Yeah,
But,
you-
like-
you can predict tendencies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And like I don't know, do you think that's something that like correlates to like technology, what technology can do, or is there like, you know, still a gap in between like what we can do amongst ourselves and what we could do interacting with technology?
I think the technology is like getting there. Like we've talked about, like Google's super nice now where I'm typing out an email and it'll give me the next second half
Yeah.
of my sentence.
Although I hate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like
but-
sometimes it's pretty right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not. Like instead of saying something about like school, it'll ask me if I want to go home. Like no, but so like I think it's getting there, but it's still not perfect.
I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly almost there. There's like
Yeah.
any type of communication you want to have in person, you can do through your phone.
And like we were talking about in class, there are some people that will like just take the like Siri or the emails like our professor and like just screw with it. So that'll also screw up the system because they'll think you are following their codes, but you're really like using it sarcastically.
Yeah.
And it'll never be perfect because we're not simplified.
Yeah.
So basically, we, for like the last question of this, so we can't be treated as algorithms because we tore them apart was what was supposed to be banished, which was power. So the egalitarian was the dream, but it resulted in hierarchical structure. Some could be dominant over others because everyone is not equally powerful in what it begins with.
Yeah.
Objective, like hard sciences, like I don't think can interact as well as some people might want them to with the soft sciences, more
Yeah.
subjective stuff.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move to the end?
Sure.
All right. So
I
utilize.
love this.
Third time watching it. Utilizing the points developed in the previous sections, analyze and discuss the dystopian society represented in Gattaca. How does the film function as a critique of Harari's evangelical optimism? What are the consequences of turning human beings into products of genetic and social engineering? In what ways does the film prove that human progress is more connected to moral formation than scientific and technological progress?
I told you guys, but Gattaca is actually the DNA secret or codes and stuff.
Oh,
Make the
yeah.
name, yeah.
Actually, like recognize like in the opening credits, like they had like the A's, the G's, all
Yeah.
those letters like bolded like in people's names and stuff. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing. At first I was like, what are we doing? But then like as like there was more letters that came up, I was like, okay.
We were talking about though, we definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I
Did you
thought I
guys
was
enjoy
going
it?
to.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think like the question that this movie raises the most is like from Harari and stuff is like, so when determining someone's future, is it their genetic makeup their biological algorithm or whatever, or is it their human will that determines?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Which-
wrote,
One of the big things that I just like, that he said like, after all, there is no gene for fate. And that throughout the entire thing stuck until, cause that was kind of toward the beginning. So I just thought that was really interesting, and then you can kind of see that play out throughout the film, and then
Yeah.
when he's with that one man who does like the DNA samples, and he's like, but who knows what he can do, like he's not,
Right.
so like I think that also honestly challenges Ferrari's idea.
Yeah.
I wish more
Sure.
movie does.
Yeah, no, it definitely challenges,
Yeah.
but like right there. it was-
yeah, I wrote very early on, like, I think whenever it was the flashback to when they were kids and they were swimming, and, Jerome, like, he's Jerome now, but like, before. But, whenever, like, the Jerome character was like swimming and like he beat the brother, like I wrote very early on, like, statistics and probability cannot predict the incredible capacity of the human spirit, like it's that differentiation between like human spirit and what their capacity is versus like what they were trying to control and predict.
Yeah, I really think that line at the end too, when they're doing it again, and he's like, how did you do it, how did you beat me, and he said, I never saved anything for the way back. He
Yeah.
was just that,
Yeah, I have put that like those that are deemed unfit still are like fully functioning, clearly capable on a different level than what society deems perfect. Like he might have had that heart problem, he might have needed glasses, but like he outbeat what was supposed to be his clearly perfect, genetically capable brother. And so for that, it definitely goes against everything that Harari's saying, and like genetically fixing everyone is going to make them the superior being. That obviously wasn't the case.
True, yeah.
And like there's obviously a way to work around the system too, because Harari was pretty much saying like that kind of person should be exterminated, but in the movie he was the one that like went to space, like was changing the world kind of thing,
Yeah.
and like everything that society was against he was pretty much bringing to the table, but like doing it in excellence. I mean slightly
Yeah.
illegally, but
yeah, no.
Yeah, the movie kind of like made me like mad at times, like because they were trying to like, you know, like they were saying like, oh, like you weren't meant for this, like you're good, like whenever like he was born and everything, like all these probabilities and everything. It's like I just like got so mad at one point. I was like, who's determining this? Like who says like he's not going to be meant for something?
And the fact that his parents died thinking that he died before them, like
Yeah.
that's just, kind of going back to that, when they were explaining like Jerome and how he was like blessed with all the gifts required, and then he says there's like nothing exceptional about his progress, but that I am Jerome, like Mars, like that was just really,
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too, like the actual Jerome, not Vincent Jerome. Like he was supposed to embody everything that everyone wanted to be, but then he ended up like disabled. Like he couldn't really do
Right.
anything about it, which led to him going crazy and incinerating himself. But it was kind of like that picture perfect thing really didn't work out, and obviously there's flaws in the system that no matter how hard you try, it's not gonna work.
yeah, it kind of brings up that question of happiness, how like you know, like Harari
Yeah,
says,
you
like
can be
there's that
pretty
pursuit of
perfect.
happiness, like everybody's gonna be happy, but like Jerome just, he wasn't.
Yeah. There was just like so many like just I don't know, this movie really got me. I was like really
what did
upset
you
like
think about
how you had like an unacceptable probability or unaccepted likelihood of like, you know, like what's that like unacceptable like who's I don't
And
know.
actually, like,
Yeah,
going back
that
to what
was-
you said about the birth thing,
Mhm.
I mean, this might be a little off topic, but it kind of relates to now. Like, Dr. Walks is saying, like, his brother, I forget, his brother was having a kid or something, and the chance of him having Down syndrome and to abort it. And who are they to, like, say that because his life isn't valued here, like, genetically, that he doesn't deserve a life? And, like,
Yeah.
and you don't know who he's gonna be really, his human will, like what
Right.
decisions he'll make.
Or like what he's capable of.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
he's capable of, exactly.
Yeah. It kind of goes with like the
And so it's not just in the
terminology.
movie, it's in real life too, already happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like the terminology, like they were using like, oh, like you get your finger pricked and everything, and like, oh, you're valid or you're invalid. Like,
Yeah,
like
valid,
we kind of do
invalid.
like the similar thing like in like today, like the people who might be like handicapped in some way, like I don't know, like maybe we don't use that exact terminology, but like there's like those stigmas that are around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did we think about Irene and Vincent's? Like, I just thought it was like interesting when, like, at first she checks his DNA sequence and says you're everything, like, and more, but there's something about it, like reading his profile and stuff, and, he said, well, if there's anything wrong with you, like, I can't see it from here, and then, like, at the end and stuff, like, he gives, like, something for her the DNA sequence, and she lets it go, so, like, what do you think that says? Like, do you think that further challenges, like, the...
I think it just says there's like the potential for like decency in a society that's like drowning in kind of corruption. Like
Yeah.
she obviously should have been brainwashed to the point where she should have turned him in. She should have thought that he was invalid, but like she didn't. So like obviously no matter how hard they tried to like program you or guide you, like there's still going to be that like I guess like swimming upstream kind of thing. Like they don't want to go with the system.
For sure. I think it kind of shows that human progress is more like moral than scientific.
Exactly, yeah, that's the whole story, yeah.
Yeah, there's still that aspect of, like, desire.
Yeah.
And
It was really, I thought it was funny too, like I kind of thought about it after I watched the movie, but like the people that were supposed to be smart and were supposed to be perfect could not solve like what was happening, no matter how hard they tried.
Yeah.
So like clearly the person that was supposed to be like the dumb one outsmarted everyone, and so again that kind of ties to like the whole Harari thing of like the outcast shouldn't be able to outsmart the leaders,
Yeah.
or well not leader, but like the collective group.
Right.
At least genetically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also that quote where they said, like, why would one of our elite be doing this to us? And, like, I don't, like, that just kind of also demonstrates that aspect of that. Yeah, I just think that's interesting.
It was also weird too, like, it was kind of, like that whole idea of the society's getting to the point of where they don't question anything, because there's what, 3 people in the whole movie that like really thought about everything, and everyone else was at their little desks typing away. And so it was interesting to see like how easy it is to, like, while there are some people that are going against it, we're just like cogs in the machine and like didn't really look up. I mean, that was the point, they all dressed the same, they all looked the same, they all looked like zombies.
They always, like, walked in, did the same
Yeah.
routine every day.
Everybody got their finger pricked the same way, everybody did their own thing, except for like when they flash back to his parents' generation, there's obviously like more color and more life, but like in the modern
Yeah.
day it was very like stark, nothing was out of place, that kind of thing.
Actually, there was a fun fact about watching the film, that kind of architecture that they use is called realism.
Really?
So, yeah, so that's why, yeah, so like that's the Stargate stuff, definitely intentional. Yeah.
What do you think
I don't know how to turn off the fun facts.
What do you think of the labeling where, like at the end when his brother figures out like it's Vincent and everything, like what do you think of him saying like you've committed fraud? Like, I mean, technically he was, but like at the same time like
He was the only
he
real
was
thing.
the only real thing that was there. Yeah,
Mhm.
I thought that was an interesting like, committed fraud, but
Yeah,
in
and I feel like
actuality.
his brother almost kind of had the idea that it was his brother.
Mhm.
Because when he went to go see Jerome, and it actually was Jerome, not his brother Jerome, like he was like, you know, but like there's always that, you know, possibilities for that.
I just thought it was crazy too, like kind of early on in the movie, whenever the parents were deciding for Jerome, what's Vincent's brother's name? Do you know?
Oh, Anton.
Yeah.
Because his
Yeah.
dad was like Anton, then he was
Right,
like, no,
right.
Vincent Anton.
Right, right.
And then he was like, worthy of his name.
Yeah.
But like it was interesting when they were like genetically thinking, like the parents almost wanted to leave something to chance, and the doctor's
Yeah.
like, no, why would you do that?
It's
Like,
the best, like
yeah,
you said,
it's
the best
Possibility, like,
That's
it's like,
yeah.
why would you want to do that to your kid?
Yeah.
It is used.
That's born with you, I think they said.
Yeah.
I
which
picked
was
up on
also
that too.
interesting.
Yeah, they did. They wanted to leave things to chance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they term that like the new natural way.
Yeah, the
to
natural
do
way.
things.
Yeah, and I guess like what Vincent does, like they refer to it as being like a borrowed ladder.
Mhm.
You know, like that's.
And so then I guess like the consequence of that is obviously like, you might think society can perform optimally, but like clearly humans have more potential than what we, I think, would give them. It's almost like that idea of like, you think that you can only do so much, but then you learn that you can do other stuff. Like you can do more than like what you're pushing yourself towards. So I think it would almost like hinder society if you would stick with like the Gattaca way, because you wouldn't like see what humans actually have the capability of
Like you
doing.
have more potential.
Yeah, and with
of
this, it
doing
lands in.
something, like you shouldn't be so like stuck in this role that you're, cause like if I don't wanna do that, then I'll do something else,
Right.
I should have that ability to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to like the pursuit of happiness idea and like the freedoms that we have. Like obviously, like in this dystopian society, like freedom and rights like are basically thrown out the window. Like all of those like testing, like cheek swabs, and like I think whenever they were catching the guy that they thought murdered the director, like instead of saying like don't move, like hands up, they were like don't swallow, don't spit, like don't touch your face, like all that
Yeah.
stuff. And you know, they like searched him that way. Like obviously, like we would like think that's insane, like if we were like searched that way, like unreasonable search or whatever. So like just like I don't know, it would be like unfathomable to think about that like happening in today's society. And like you were saying before, how like if I want to do this, but like they're telling me to do this, like where's like your freedom, like, and where's like what they're imposing on you, like where's that distinction, and like where do they cross that line, I guess.
So then I guess like ultimately that we just said like the film pretty much goes against everything that Harari says, because he pretty much proclaims that like this is perfect, it's the only way to go, it's the only way society's gonna function and be great. But then clearly we see with Vincent, like you're capable of like doing greater things. It's not, you don't have to predict everything to have a good outcome kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else? We still have like 8.5 minutes until we get to like the 50, but I don't know. I think we pretty much covered
We
like
did cover
we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I think we went faster because we all knew.
Yeah, we
knew how this
we all had
works.
stuff to say, and
Yeah.
pretty much a consensus for almost everything.
Yep, pretty much. We agree with Han, not so much Ferrari. Machines of Love and Grace covered that like humans can't be
Or
predicted.
not stable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then
the film.
Gattaca just exemplified why Harari's can't really be right, because the moral formation is more powerful than like scientific technological progression.
Yeah.